Good evening, everybody. Thank you very much for coming along and joining with us tonight. Really appreciate you taking the time. It's a busy time of the year on the farm. My name is David Clark. I'm the Provincial President from the Canterbury Federated Farmers. So I'll give you a rundown here tonight how we're going to run this, but firstly we'll go through the emergency procedures. There's 4 exits marked here. The assembly point, should we have an emergency of any type, is straight across the road. We'll assemble there and wait for further instructions. So tonight I'd like to welcome MP for Rangatahi, Andrew Falloon. Our past Mayor, Donna Favel, is here in the audience. Welcome, Donna. Thank you for coming along. Mayor-elect Neil Brown is here with us. And Ian McKenzie, our newly elected Environment Canterbury Councillor, is here as well. Welcome, Ian. So thank you very much for attending also. The order of events that we're going to run through is we've got our CEO of New Zealand Federated Farmers, Terry Copeland, is with us here tonight. We're going to hear from Terry as we open up, and then here on the panel we've got Gavin Forrest, who is the General Manager of Policy, Federated Farmers, Dr. Paul Lemire, who is North Island Policy Manager, but also is integral into our water policy team, and Chris Allen, who is the board spokesman for Environment and Water, and also in Canterbury Farming. Segments of the evening. Now we'd like you to keep your questions to any specific item of clarification. Then we're going to have half an hour of question and answers at the end. We'll have roving microphones moving up and down each side of the building. So that's the plan. So firstly, I think it goes without saying, it needs to be said, is that farmers all want improved water quality, and we've been on the journey for a long time. Here in Canterbury, we've been working with the Canterbury Land and Water Plan for 5 or 6 years. That was a plan that was put in place by the commissioners in response to directions from the National Policy Statement out of central government and the collaborative process of the Land and Water Fund. So we're already on that journey. The benefits, the results, the improvements of that regulatory response is starting to be seen in waterways. But these things do take time, but we're on the journey. So in the Hinds Plains area, we're tasked with 36% reduction in nitrogen by 2035. That's no small ask, but it is if we all work hard and technology gives us a bit of a tailwind as well. That's a target that we can achieve. What we're concerned about is those achievable but tough targets being replaced with targets that we've got no hope of achieving. So why are we here tonight? Why have we called almost 500 of you out tonight to get you to come spend your time looking through these proposals with us? Why are we concerned about what is being proposed by government? Why did Federated Farmers come out so hard on the first day that these proposals were announced? So Chris Allen, within a few hours of the proposals, was on the public record as saying that these proposals were the end of pastoral farming in some areas of New Zealand. End of pastoral farming as we know it. Chris went on to say that the government had thrown farmers under the tractor. Now, why would we come out and make such tough statements? Because we'd read the proposals, that's why. So since then, various people within government, including the ministers proposing these changes, have accused Federated Farmers of scaremongering. We've said that we've been extreme, and that they've said we've grossly overstated the effects. Minister O'Connor is on record as saying that only a few farmers will be affected by these proposals. Good work will be able to continue doing the good work, and they won't be affected by these proposals. Infamously, Minister O'Connor is on record in Gore last week at saying that farmers should get over it. Minister Parker was on TV 3 weeks ago being quizzed on these proposals, and his response was, "Trust me, I know what I'm doing." Now my view as your provincial president is I don't trust him. Why? So, the document that we're all consulting on is here. The Action for Healthy Waterways, all 115 pages of it. On page 47, it has a map. It has a map that indicates in Canterbury we have to make a 50 to 80% reduction in nitrogen loss to achieve a new national policy statement bottom line of a dissolved nitrogen of 1 milligram per litre. Now that 1 milligram per litre roughly can be lined up with the 6.9 milligrams of nitrate that we're currently aiming for under the Canterbury Land and Water Plan, which is the mean drinking water standard set down by the World Health Organisation. So we're going from 6.9. So 6.9 of nitrogen is effectively similar to a dissolved nitrogen of 6. So we're going from 6 as a target to 1. So page 47 has a map saying there'll be a 50 to 80% reduction in nitrogen loss required to meet these. So on page 87 of the document, on page 86, section 10.2 is the magnitude of benefits and costs. Now it refers to a 76% reduction being required in the Selwyn-Waihora zone to meet a dissolved nitrogen of 1. Now it makes a footnote at the base of page 86, referring us to a document written by Environment Canterbury in June 2017. Now that document, that model, was a model that was done to look at the effects of trying to achieve a dissolved nitrogen of 0.88 and a 76% or 78% reduction in the Selwyn-Waihora zone. So very similar to what's being proposed under this. I'm going to read from it. Section 3 results on page 10. The land use in the catchment will have to alter dramatically to achieve the target, because the very substantial implications for the catchment. There would effectively be no irrigation or intensive land use in the catchment, and forestry or extensive grazing would dominate the landscape. Such large-scale effective retirement of intensive land has not been experienced in New Zealand on any scale. There would be significant changes in the social structure of the catchment, with forestry or extensive grazing resulting in fewer farms and a reduction in employment, losses of economic value in the land, significant loss in equity, and depending on the time scale, bankruptcy for those with debt who could not be managed through the transition. That's what the document says. That is the words of Tim Davey, Dr. Tim Davey, who is ECAN's chief scientist, in a report written for Environment Canterbury and referred to in David Parker's own document at the base of page 86. That is not a matter of trusting the minister, and it's not a matter of getting over it. In my view, for our district, that is economic vandalism and nothing more. So, with that, I'd like to ask Terry Copeland to the stage. That's why we've called you tonight together. Terry.
Good evening. It's great to see so many of you out here. As David said, we know it's a busy time of the year, and having nearly 500 people in here really shows that this is an issue that cuts to the core of what farmers are feeling at the moment. I just want to spend just a few minutes before we listen to our experts around what Federated Farmers does. And that one. Really, Federated Farmers have been strong for 120 years, really looking after farmers' interests. As an organisation, we really are here to empower farmers to excel. We're not here to talk about how do we make farmers good farmers. That's not our role. Our farmers have the opportunity, I think, right now to be involved in how we can ensure that farmers can continue to run thriving businesses, that we have communities that are vibrant, that actually is a way forward. I think it's never been so important as today that we have a strong Federated Farmers. And yes, we do represent 13,000 farming and business support members, but it's not enough. We've got to fight this fight right across our industry. We have members that are right across the farming spectrum. We're not just about dairy and sheep and beef. We have members that have viticulture. We have members that are growers of arable, of horticulture. We have high country, we have low plains, we have pretty much every spectrum of farming. And that's what makes us strong, the diversity of who we are and who we represent. And importantly, all of our members are voluntary. You are here because you want to make a difference. You're here because you need that voice to be heard. We represent that long-term ability of landowners to profitably and sustainably produce food and fibre. Things are very challenging right now. We're going to hear tonight about how challenging this really is. But at the end of the day, we're agnostic as an organisation of what you do with your land. That should be over to you to decide. Unlike the levy organisations, we're a bottom-up organisation. The views of the farmer is captured right from grassroots, embedded into our policy and our positions. That's what sets us aside to all of the other people within our industry. We are member-driven. If we have to go into a team agriculture conversation about what's important for our members, we've got to hold fast because we have a mandate. We hear it from what farmers want. So when we disagree with some of our other organisations, it's because we've got your views firmly in mind. We are apolitical. We don't support any political party directly or indirectly. We just want to support good policy. We want to support appropriate legislation from whichever party produces it, who is the government of the day. We want to hold that government to account, and we certainly are doing that at the moment. We ask the questions that members are asking us. We're a big industry. Exports are up significantly. It now represents 80% of all merchandisable exports from this country. $46 billion worth of export sales. If we don't consider the economic argument around legislative change, where's the replacement for this income going to come from? Particularly from provincial rural New Zealand. Not only is it significant in size, it's also significant in growth. Agricultural growth in exports is growing at nearly twice the rate of the remaining 20%. So the other 20% of merchandisable exports aren't growing at the same rate as us. If we reduce our agricultural exports, we reduce the growth of the economy. We achieve these great results, though, despite the fact that we work in an unsubsidised arena across highly protected markets. And this is really important. I think a lot of people don't realise, you do in this room, and I think some of our urban audience don't appreciate or understand that we're one of the few countries in the world that doesn't subsidise our agricultural production. People want to compare us politically, it's been said, we should be like some of the Europeans in doing what they're trying to achieve. Yet Europe subsidises its farmers to 20% of their income. It's not a level playing field. So we are very productive in this country. We have the lowest footprint from a climate perspective, from an environmental perspective, in producing food. We should be encouraged, in fact, from a global perspective, to be producing more food. The last thing I want to talk about is the economic model. So there is talk that we're about 11% of GDP. Very convenient to segment as our dairy is only 3.5% and the meat industry is only whatever it is. Collectively, our industry is 11% of GDP. That's between production and processing. What it doesn't take into consideration, for example, is the service industries. The diesel mechanic in rural New Zealand that only really survives because of farming clients. The GDP really across our industry, when you take that into consideration, is closer to 15%. How is the country going to replace that, and replace it quickly, If Greenpeace have their way and we reduce our ruminant numbers by 50% by 2030, we are going to replace the income, the throughput. How are we going to have communities with schools that are vibrant? It's not fully thought through, and that's part of the problem that we're going to talk about today. So thank you for coming tonight, and we'll certainly learn, I think, a lot about the impacts and what the real messages are behind this legislation.
That's good. Thanks, Terry. Now, we'll go. Hold on, Terry. I'll do a little wee exercise. Now, we've got a lot of people here tonight, so I'll ask you to a show of hands. Could those of you who feel as though you have been provided with sufficient information from our government to make an informed decision on the impact on your business and the community as a whole on this proposal, could you please raise your hand? Now, Terry, we thought we'd have to do a bit of counting on that, but yeah, there's not a lot of counting to be done there. Okay, out of curiosity, of those of you who are in the audience, those of you who are not farming but are involved in agricultural economy directly or indirectly, service firm, investments, something that's not actually on the land, could you raise your hand, please? You reckon, Terry, 20%? Yeah, I think we've got 20%. Thank you. Good. Thank you. It's a good indication. Thanks, Terry. Mid Canterbury exemplifies the social and economic value of a profitable primary sector. So I came to this district in 1994. This was a district that was still trying to recover from the economic collapse of the 80s. It was recovering from drought. It wasn't resilient to drought because it had limited areas of irrigation. It was recovering from a snowstorm. And it was a community that was down on its luck and trying to get itself back on its feet. And along came irrigation, or modern irrigation, and dairy farming. Now, if you look at this community now, one of the things that really shows what's been achieved is the theatre you're sitting in. This is the sort of facility that everybody has access to in this community as a result of the economic transformation that we've undergone in the last 25 years. Lakehood's another very good sign of a healthy economy and society. A facility that families, regardless of their social standing, regardless of the household income, can all go and play on that lake and do during the summertime. But there's a lot that's happened in this community in 25 years. 25 years ago, this was a place that our young people left the district and went and found employment elsewhere, well-paying employment elsewhere. Now it's a place that people come back to work and live and have professional roles. Some of the professional roles in this community are better paying than they are in Christchurch. So we've come a long way. Now that's not to say there hasn't been an impact, and that's not to say that we haven't realised that impact and we're working to address it through the Canterbury Land and Water Plan. But we're a district that's been on a big journey, and that journey, in part, has its driver out of agriculture and irrigation. So one of the things we've got here in Mid-Canterbury is flexible land use. We can react to markets, whether that be somebody that decided that breeding ewes had their day at the park, their day was gone and wanted to be dairy support farmers. Somebody that wanted to grow kale for winter grazing, or somebody that wanted to convert to dairy. And there was that flexibility. But equally, there's the opportunity for them to move out of dairy farming to some other land use if they chose. But we've got to make sure that the regulatory framework is flexible enough to allow them to do that. So here in Mid-Canterbury, we're early adopters of precision agriculture. I know at home on our property we've been running auto steer since 2009. That's been a big step forward. We had the opportunity in 2010 to take rotor roamers off that had only gone in 1998 and put centre pivots on because it had good economic and environmental outcomes. So Mid-Canterbury has gone ahead because it's had flexibility and it's had profitability and it's had forward-thinking farmers. So that's not to say that we can't solve technological problems as we go forward. So the innovation and marketing of our products, whether it be pastoral products or arable products, we've got innovation and products that we can proudly take to the world. We've got a thriving and diverse economy, and we've got schools that are full to bursting. That's a long way from where we were 25 or 30 years ago. So we've got something to be, in my view, we've got something to be proud of in this district, and we've got to make sure. I run shit right. So, sorry, Gavin.
I'll let Chris come later. Whoops, we've got the device. Yep, I'll come up here. Right, that's okay. Thanks, David. Too many years ago I worked here and remember what Ashburton and this district was like, and my job was to make sure that we keep going forwards like that.
Sorry.
Where is it? Where we are? You got the button? So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the process. There's a lot of information here. We've tried to cut it down. We've failed probably. It's going to be on our website, so don't get worried about trying to read it all, but we'll try and give you a really good gist of what's proposed and plenty of time for questions. So I'll try and make it along. So David said this, we are positive. We all want good water quality. I don't think any of us want anything else, and to be managed better. The problem is that the people making the rules now, starting to make rules, are on a time warp. They haven't recognised that we're making progress, that the trends are that water quality is improving in a lot of places, but there's more work there. Now, whenever we say that, somebody says, but it's not here. Correct. In some places it's getting worse, or it's not as good as it needs to be. So we recognise that the water quality is an urban and a rural issue. It's not for one community to blame the other. It's about all of us together. We need to reward those who are doing a good job. And the government's saying, yeah, it's just rules alongside advice, support, guidance and incentives. But the trouble is, that's not what's happening. So why have we pushed back? You've heard the Minister say it's just a discussion document. Well, that's the discussion document, but that's actually not the bit that matters. It's the rule book that matters. So in accompanying that discussion document are three pieces of regulatory framework. A national policy statement, a national environment standard, and a stock exclusion regulation draft. So these are all rules and regulations. And we have read them in depth. We discover new things every day. Paul will talk about the stuff around where stock exclusion occurs. We found out something different last week. Else is there, but it's still shallow by any manner of means. And in there, actually, so you've probably heard us say 6 weeks. 6 weeks might be long enough for one, but we've got discussion document, 3 regulatory proposals, climate change proposals going on, 2 other national policy statements around elite soils and urban development, RMA reforms, and I hate to tell you about biodiversity coming down the channel next month. So, by mistake, at the busiest time. So this is not like a district plan or regional plan process. This is not like a government bill process. At the moment, now this may change, but at the moment there are no hearings, there's no more chances to have input. This is our one and only chance to have input into this process. It then goes to a panel that's been hand-selected by the government, and at the moment, I'm going to push hard for this to change, but at the moment it goes to Cabinet, not Parliament, for a decision with the support of the Greens or not. So really clear, no parliamentary process, no chances to go and express your views, to clarify what you said, and potentially no second bite of the cherry. Whatever comes out the other end becomes the law. Sorry, I committed 2 clicks to that point. No, that's true, sorry. So, vast majority of farmers don't have anything to worry about. Wrong. The end point of this within a few years is every farmer having a freshwater plan, whether they need it or not. That's at least $3,500 of cost of doing the plan, let alone the cost of the implications of the plan. Those with existing plans will have to renew them. We've got national stock exclusion setback requirement would include removing a fence. If it's closer than 5 metres on average, it has to go up to that. really tough nitrogen, phosphorus, sediment, and E. coli bottom lines, which are just ridiculous. Much higher council rates are going to result out of this because councils are going to have to employ huge numbers of staff that aren't there, I hate to tell you, to do the work, and massive impacts on rural community schools and business. But we're going to stop this happening, so don't panic yet. But the fight's not over. So, government got a bit surprised when we went out and said it was crap. We thought we were over-exaggerating. Chris got dragged over the coals in a few meetings for exaggerating things. But there's some statements in there that kind of gave warning bells. So this is the government's own interim regulatory impact statement, that every major proposal has to have an impact statement. So this was given 2 ministers before they decided. There's some pretty eye-watering stuff in there. It's likely to have immediate negative impacts on farmers' well-being. Hello. Along with climate change. Councils may increase rates in order to resource the extra workload with potential negative impacts on wider communities. Hello. It's a long and complex process, but they have to have the plans, draft plans by 2023 and the final plans by 2025. Hello. I think they didn't read the fine print. And I was always taught to read the fine print. So how do we get there? So the fundamental problem we've got is that their assumptions of where we are wrong. Like the Irishman said, if you want to go, where should I go from here to there? Well, we said I wouldn't start from where you are. The trouble is the government started from the wrong spot. They've started from the wrong conclusion. So if they start from the wrong conclusion that we're in a really bad state and urgent remedial action is required, then we're going to get the wrong answer. So that same statement says that the process for giving effect to an NPS, so we have a freshwater NPS, National Policy Statement, jargon galore in this document, is long and complex. So they've said this is a long and complex process. What they've forgotten to tell them, actually there's a lot of work in place that's already having an effect. So they basically ignored their own advice. So is the premise for change fair? No. So what I think most of us find most discouraging is that it's really pushed aside all that good work that farmers have done, all the effort that's gone into, particularly in Canterbury, and that's why the numbers of you are here, because you know what that work is like. Huge amount of progress has been made, a lot of progress and plans have been made, a lot of regional policy statements written and taking effect. All that can be is at risk. Years of investment, progress that farmers have made. I'm sure that some of these people that are making the rules still think farmers are like they were 20 years ago when they were last in power. Well, that's not the case. Shifting the posts is like trying to change the rules of the Rugby World Cup in the middle of the Rugby World Cup. The Japanese might need that, they might win anyway. So we've got a huge shifting of the posts. It's just going to make chaos and really difficult for farmers to know where to go. And changing course risks that goodwill that we think is out there. So Chris is now going to talk to you a closer look at it. As I say, there's a lot of detail on this, don't worry too much about that. We'll get on our website and there'll be time for questions. You want to go from there, Chris, do you?
So let's take a closer look at the details. The National Policy Statement for Freshwater Management. What is a National Policy Statement? It's the legal regulation that regional councils must give effect to through the regional plan. Under the Freshwater Management, the National Policy Statement, regional councils must change their plans to set catchment limits to achieve the community catchment outcomes and the National Objectives Framework. The National Objectives Framework is the national bottom lines. You've got A band, B band, C band and D band. The D band you cannot stay in it, you must come back up to a C band. If you're in an A band or a B band, you must maintain or improve. So you've got a little bit of wriggle room, but you can only go pretty much up. The freshwater NPS directs the councils to maintain or improve their water quality. It is not just a guidance to councils, as I've heard one of the ministers say. Paul.
So I'm just going to go through the first set of proposals. It's quite detailed in here, so we'll have some questions at the end. And I'm going to work through basically the new bottom lines for phosphorus and nitrogen and sediment, concentrate really on nitrogen and sediment. So as Chris said, in the MPS, there's this mechanism called the NOF, and that sets a load of attributes up, which are things you measure in waterways that affect your values. It might be nitrogen, phosphorus, etc. And this proposal has introduced new NOF attributes, NOF stands for National Objective Framework, to do with ecosystem health. And it's to put in these new numbers in for nitrogen and phosphorus. So nitrogen of 1 milligram per litre is the bottom line, you have to be better than that, and phosphorus of 0.018. And they're pretty onerous. Our issue, I suppose, is that they're not linked to ecosystem health. There's very poor linkage. So as we work through the evidence of why those numbers will be there, we don't see the evidence there. They're not practically achievable in places, as has been discussed. There's been something like an 80% reduction in nitrate needed in places like in Canterbury. The councils admittedly don't have to set a hard deadline on this. They can push it out. But as we know, going through these plans, they'll go as fast as they possibly can. And the phosphorus and sediment bottom lines are particularly problematic in the dry stock areas. For example, looking at the data, the last water quality data, about 40% of forestry, about 10% of native catchments currently fail the phosphorus bottom line. So they're pretty strict. I wouldn't call them pristine, but they're pretty strict. So I'm just going to work through that correlation issue next. And this is one of our main issues, basically, that there's not the evidence why we need such a strict bottom line for ecosystem health. So what this slide is supposed to show, apologies for the scattergun approach up there, is the correlation between nitrogen, so DIN, which is soil organic nitrogen, and microvertebrate community index. Now MCI is basically a measure of the ecosystem health of waterways. So the scientists go in and measure things like insects, worms and snails, look at how they're impacted and what they should be in a healthy waterway, and then they give a score. The higher the score, the better. So really pristine waterways can be 110, 120. The new bottom line on MCI, the new bottom line in this document's 90, it used to be 80. That's when they think you've got a poor MCI score effectively. So what this graph is showing, if you look down the middle of the graph, you've got the MCI score, and on the bottom of the nitrate measure, and it's just showing you've got massive variability between nitrate. And basically, if you do a fit on this graph, it shows only about 16% of the MCI variabilities can be linked, correlated to nitrogen. The other 84% is other factors. This is other data that comes from independent scientists. You can see we've got this from an OIA request. On the left, there's phosphorus correlation with MCI, the phosphorus levels. MCI up the left axis and the phosphorus on the bottom. As you can see, there's no correlation effectively. It's variable, and the same with phosphorus. So what that shows us is there's huge variability around the countryside when you actually model actual MCIs, actual extreme phosphorus and nitrogen levels. More importantly, I suppose, if you look at independent assessments of this, it's not just me saying this, local government New Zealand just put out a report a few weeks ago called the Initial Economic Advisory Report on Essential Freshwater Package. They've been working on this for a while. They've given you some of the models that they've been doing around the country. And there's some very interesting work in there around nitrogen and phosphorus, the DIN and the DRP levels on MCI, on there's a correlation. So as it says there, and this is straight from the report in italics, there's little evidence of a causal link and little evidence of a strong correlation between the nutrients and MCI. So they question the cost effectiveness of those policies. Importantly, I think they say, you will understand this, that $1 spent reducing nutrients may be expected to achieve less improvement in MCI scores than $1 spent in all other actions. Actions for riparian shading, sediment reduction, stream habitat will probably have more of an impact and be more cost effective on improving MCI scores, which is a good indicator of ecosystem health. And they expect that the nitrogen and DRP targets that are in this proposal actually fail with the policy efficiency test. So governments go for an efficiency and effectiveness test and they would fail that. So So I don't think they're cost effective or efficient. Backing up what David said before about work in Canterbury around the effects of trying to meet these new levels, these new bottom lines we want for nitrogen and phosphorus. Local Government New Zealand modelled the PC1 area in Waikato, so we'll make our Waikato catchment. It's about 1.1 million hectares. We're just going for a plan change there at the moment with Healthy Rivers. They reran their model looking at these numbers, and they said the model spat out that economically where it would get to would be a 68% reduction in dry stock area and a 13% reduction in dairy area, and that would go to all forestry, which would lead to about a 10% reduction in profit on land across all land use and about 100 million a year cost. A massive impact to try and get to those numbers. So what's Fed's position on that? So we obviously support healthy ecosystem and waterways, but we want to get there in a realistic way that's cost effective environmentally and economically. We don't think there should be a single number for DIN or DRP across the whole country, and waterways vary too much for that. Science says you can't do it, which the grass before. We've already got within the MPS for freshwater indexes that are measurements that tell us about ecosystem health, such as MCI. We've got phytoplankton. They're proposing fish indexes. They will tell the community and the council if we have healthy waterways or not. Our proposal is that if we're not achieving the waterways that the community desires, then the council can go through a plan change, as is happening in many areas around the country at the moment, to look at all those factors that affect ecosystem health, put out a plan, and go through the process towards it happen. So we can look at a mix of regulatory and non-regulatory methods involving better riparian management and planting, reducing sediment often a major driver of core MCI, for example, in ecosystem health, habitat restoration, etc. And that, from our point of view, much more cost-effective environmentally and economically. And once we go through that process, we'll have an iterative process to work through where we need to get to effectively. Got something like that?
Right,
We'll stop there.
We'll stop there for some questions. Yep. So we'd like to take two questions now if there's any clarification required on nitrogen or phosphorus about the bottom lines, and we're going to be assisted with microphones from Chris Ford, our dairy section chair, and David Ackland on the other side, Meat Fibre chair and vice president. So questions, anybody ask a question of clarification? No, that's all right. We'll either
I'll just get it.
Excellent. Chris.
So the new E. coli knock bans for swimming sites. In principle, we support it. Federated Farmers has always promoted the focus on enabling swimming at the places, the times of the year, and where people want to swim. Proposal proposes action plans to reach E. coli targets at about 300 targeted locations identified by the council as swimming spots. These E. coli targets for the primary contact sites are stricter than what is in the current national bottom lines, but at least they are focused on the places where people are likely to actually swim.
So I started doing RMA when Paul was still at school, and this is where we started with the RMA. We started with targeting where we needed to swim and setting water quality standards. So we've just gone full circle.
Into the future.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry.
Right. National Environmental Standards for freshwater, so that's what they call an NES. What is a National Environmental Standard? In this NES, they are effectively national rules. They're set on a significant number of farm activities, including what consents you need for different activities. They are deemed to be part of the regional plan. Councils can also have stricter rules. They apply immediately that the NES is enforced. They might have a different date, but some parts might start straight away, or there might be a different time that they step in. And they can cancel out when you've got a plan that might be more stricter, in which case it will let go. They are not just general guidance for councils, as we've heard ministers say. In this case, they also specify that councils can charge farmers for monitoring of permitted activities. That's a significant change. The other thing is that they don't involve local, taking the community along and local problems, local solutions. These are nationally sorted out solutions from Wellington, so there's very little engagement from the local area. So what are some of the standards that are included? So there's strict rules on activities around and within all wetlands. And there is no minimum wetland size. If you so happen to have a wetland that's 10 square metres, you will be putting a fence back at least 10 metres from each side of that, and then there will be other setbacks on that for where you can do any other water drainage or any other activity that will affect that wetland. The resource consent is required for and a prohibition of some land use and change and intensification may apply. There's winter grazing practices, new standards, and resource consent for some. Nitrate cap and reduction for high-end activities in some catchments. None of those catchments are in Canterbury, so we're just passing over them. Compulsory watered freshwater farm plans for all by either 2023 or 2025. The new rules around culverts, weirs, dams, fords, etc. to provide for fish passage, and there's quite a few more. Those are the significant ones. So the land use change. It's an effective ban. Proposal. Farmers, foresters and undeveloped landowners developing to a more intensive land use, e.g. forestry to farming, arable or dry stock to dairy support, or any land to dairy farming, or an increase in the cropping or irrigating area, must apply for a discretionary consent and will not be able to increase the N, P, E, coli, or sediment from their property above the 2017 to 18 farming base year. Now that could be a little bit problem trying to model how much E. coli you had coming off your property 2 years ago. So I don't know how that all stitches together, but someone in Wellington decided that they could figure it out. Intensification with the farm type is not captured, so you can have more beef animals on a dry stock farm. Controls apply until councils have new plans in place, supposedly by 2025.
I was going to go through some of the issues with that, but before I do, as Chris said, the proposed NES is something that's worth you reading. What David showed before, the discussion documents, all the nice fluff, it doesn't correlate with the actual rule. We're going to try and go through some of the rules tonight. The MPS is full of policy language and it's initial policy expert fairly hard to understand what any of it means. The NES is effectively like a regional plan. It's the rules, what you can do, how many metres step back you need, what sort of consent you need. So if you're used to reading rules and what you need to do, it's much more readable. It's not well written, so it's incomprehensible, I'll be the first to admit, and as Kevin says, we're still trying to work through some of it. But of all the things that might help you submit on this, that's the thing to read. Feds has also put through on their website a snapshot of the proposal, so we've tried to digest that down, what it actually means for the sort of things we're going through today. So there's a lot of help around that for your submission. I'll talk a bit at the end about how to do submissions, but there's
I'd like to add something to that. Paul thought we got something wrong, and this shows how difficult it is. Because we carefully looked through it and taken the worst case scenario from the discussion document and the rules. And we always thought the rules were the worst. We actually found some discussion document was worse than what was in the rules. So that's our problem. We actually don't know what rules look like, and even the officials don't.
Yep, absolutely.
So just a couple of questions that, to touch on what Chris was talking about. Now, Chris, if we were on the top of the farm to the top of the Ashburton Gorge, and we had an extensive grazing property, we had a 500 hectare paddock, and we had half a dozen wetlands, 10 square metres, which is about the size of the stage, part of the stage that you're sitting on, would those have to be fenced in a 500 hectare extensive block in the high country?
There's no exemptions within the framework to say, by the way, those that are very small, isolated, or low stocking rate, there's no exemptions in the framework. So, sorry to whoever that person was that 500 hectares, they will be out there with a post driver, and I'd imagine you'd need to put a wire netting fence around it, because if it's a wetland and you're wanting to protect it, you'd actually want to keep sheep out as well. So it's not just about putting on a wire around the outside and trying to keep cattle out. But these are some of the things that aren't thought through when there's not much farming involved in writing rules.
And very little impact. So another question for you, Chris. Winter grazing and the requirement for a resource consent for winter grazing. Would that capture a cropping farmer planting green feed oats to winter lambs after harvest?
If you're grazing between the winter period, then yes.
Right. So any arable farmer.
If you trigger, so we'll go through that on the slides, but if you trigger the thresholds on size or slope or other triggers, we'll go through those on the slides, and yes, potentially.
That person who so have some field tiles in their property, that'll come through next slide, but they're for their excitement as well.
Okay. Right, move on.
So the land use change, some of the issues that we're seeing at the moment is effectively nitrogen phosphorus. So we've got issues around how to accurately estimate those losses, particularly E. coli sediment, how you improve that. Yes, any of them. You're fair point. So any increase of any of those four. The way the rules are written, you need discretionary consent, and it won't be granted if you increase any one of those four contaminants above your 2017-18 baseline. If you do increase them, you need to go for a non-compliant consent. Non-compliant consent is the hardest type of consent you can get. The presumption for non-compliant consent is not to grant it. You're effectively guilty or to prove yourself innocent. You're not in accordance with the rules of the plan. So all the burden of proof is on the applicant. You have to pay for all assessments, all the staff time, the commissioner's time if they have a hearing, which they probably will do, if it's notified, etc. These things tend to run into hundreds of thousands of dollars. So this is a high hurdle if you want to do that land use change. Forestry to anything, as Chris has said, dry stock to dairy, etc. Even a bit more dairy support or increase in irrigated area. So this is quite a discharge based, not effects based rule from our point of view. It's not in the places where there's a problem with the contaminants that are a problem. It's everywhere across the whole country. Even if that catchment is meeting its bottom lines, or there's no issue with nitrogen in Gisborne, tough. You've still got to go through that hurdle for the next 5 years at least, and you can't do that land use change.
So one of the problems around that would be someone's running a dairy farm and they've got a small runoff block, and they think, well, I need to send a few more of my capital away to a slightly bigger runoff block that I'll just store. That's a good idea, but you won't be able to do it under these rules. You'll be trapped by whatever you've got unless you're going to another block that happens to be a dairy support block and someone else is not going there. So there's going to be some unintended consequences, especially if you're trying to de-stock, say, a dairy platform over the winter. Even more so than what you currently are. There's just no legal room in these standards.
Okay, so what's our response to that? It kind of takes away what's made New Zealand a strong farming sector. It takes away flexibility. It takes away our farmers. We saw that Terry did some slides earlier. We don't have the luxury of subsidies to protect us against changing markets. In fact, it's good. We respond to changing markets. What this does is it locks us in a time warp. And it locks us in a time warp that assumes that every single catchment is over-allocated or as near to allocation as possible. It assumes every catchment's got a problem. So it's a sledgehammer to make a warner, and I like what Paul was saying. Think about these are national rules rather than regional rules. And national rules simply don't work, and that's why we've got regional councils. We have regional rules that are regionally based on each catchment, even each sub-catchment. So it's a knee-jerk reaction, overreaction to an overestimation, an overstatement of the size and nature of the problem. What's really interesting is in Greenpeace did a very clever little manipulation. There's a graph on NFE's site that shows nitrogen loss in soil in New Zealand in total. It's actually plateaued for, I think, close to a decade. Greenpeace took out the total bit, which you can do, and then published it, which showed dairy had increased, fine, but sheep beef had decreased. Why? Because the amount of land in dairy had gone up, and sheep beef gone down. When you let the total fur come back in, the amount of nitrogen lost from New Zealand soils over the last decade hasn't changed at all. Dairy is seen as a villain. The reality is that despite a huge increase in dairy from sheep beef, which involves an intensification of land use, there hasn't been an increase in nitrogen loss from New Zealand farmland in over a decade. Any measurements instead. So, again, based on false assumptions, most of the intensively farmed catchments with a problem already have existing plans in place or are going through the process. So, from our perspective, if there is a problem, identify where the problems are, identify the nature of the problem, identify solutions that go. That would be the minimum. I don't think any of these even sat down and figured out where the catchments that they think have got problems haven't got plans in place. They might find them very, very few. Canterbury's gone through it, Southland's going through it. So most of this is in place. And the land use change moratorium is the corner. It's effectively this try and stop this increase in dairying as a view. Increase in dairying has caused a problem, but nothing like how much it has increased, because the guys that have been, the new conversions are actually a hell of a lot better, quite frankly, than the old ones. We know that. They've got best technologies. But we also know that that conversion has slowed down. The market signals are saying that. But what this is doing is stopping any land use change of any significance within catchments. Not a problem at all. So, big issue for us and for you guys.
Intensive winter grazing. So what's proposed? Intensive winter grazing is permitted activity only. So when intensive winter grazing means on a paddock grazing where the stock are grazed between May to September inclusive, on an annual forage crop regardless of supplementary use. It takes place on land with a slope of less than 10 degrees or 15 degrees. There's two thresholds in the discussion document. Or it doesn't take place over more than 30 hectares or 50 hectares, whichever you go for, 5% or 10% of the farm, whichever is the greater. This is not talking about the Canterbury rules, which is 10% as a threshold for winter grazing for cattle. This is 10% winter grazing on your farm. So it could be for sheep, it could be deer, it could be whatever. The winter grazing cannot take place, so be permitted if it's over a critical source area. And a critical source area is a landscape feature. There's a gully, a swale, a depression that accumulates the runoff from adjacent flats and slopes and delivers it to the surface water body, such as rivers or lakes, artificial waterways, and field trials. So I'm sure that there's a good time to look at the survey.
Absolutely, Chris.
So how many farmers in this room would actually have a farm where there's field tiles and where they would possibly be running stock over the winter?
10%? 10%, you think, Chris?
I think it's quite a bit more than that. 20? Can you put your hands back up again, please? Yeah. I'd say at least a quarter. Yeah. Are you okay with that?
Yeah, how about who's got swales or gullies through their property that grazes winter stock? Catch another 20-25%, wouldn't it?
Yep, exactly the same.
So it's going to have an impact on a lot of people.
Okay. So there's also going to be a requirement, this is not optional, there's going to be a requirement to do top-down grazing for the crops in all circumstances. So you'll only be able to start your grazing at the top of the paddock. You won't be able to have a mob at the top of the paddock and one at the bottom and meet in the middle. You won't be able to have one at the top and one at the middle, because you've always got to start at the top of the paddock, because that's the way the words are. So you can't. No discretion on that one. A good management practice would say you can start at the top of the paddock, or you would look for the waterways. This one here is not giving you that discretion. You must resow the paddock within 1 month or as soon as practical after grazing it in the winter. So I imagine that means that the soil type has come right in the grain. It's okay. Hugging that's over 10 centimetres or potentially 20 centimetres, depends which way the feedback goes. And it must not occur over more than 50% of the paddock. So I'm sure you, all farmers are out there, you're going and saying, well, I've got this much here and it's over 50% of the paddock. Oh, now it's 48 or 56. This is going to be a problem for you, because there's going to be someone driving up the road with a nice white car and a clipboard taking photos of And there's going to be setbacks from waterways between 5 and 20 metres that have been proposed. Otherwise, it's a restricted discretionary consent. What that means is the council will only have restricted discretion on what they can look at on the front.
So, what are the issues as we see it? Obviously, integration is a very important part of that farming, especially around here in Canterbury. This proposal is quite a mixed bag. There's a load of committed activities, as Chris has just shown you on the previous slide. If you don't meet any one of those, they then trigger into the consent regime, the restricted discretionary. The restricted discretionary you won't know it's discretionary and it doesn't have to be granted, and it's restricted to a set of criteria that's in the NES category, that's what it means. So the council can control the area of forage crops, how you solve critical source area issues, what sort of setbacks you need, the methods for protecting those critical source areas, and you have to do a farm environment plan within 2 years effectively of applying. As Chris said, tile drains is particularly problematic. I think that's a mistake from America. I don't actually wanted that to go into the proposal. It's being incorporated in the wastewater at the moment, tile drains will be captured. So what do we really want? How do we want this fixed? Effectively, we want committed activities to be much more reasonable. What we're proposing at the moment, subject to feedback from the board and from members, is to link the grazing slope to 20 degrees. That's in the South End current plan at the moment. And they've gone for a huge process to look at what's applicable, from an effects point of view, but also from a consenting point of view. Because let's not forget that the council regional councils, all these rules are suddenly going to have a quantum leap forward in the amount of consent they're going to have to work through. Cost from your side, but also compliance issues from their side. We're proposing that you're still permitted up to 100 hectares or 15% of the farm, whatever's greater. I think there's a category around that at the moment. The top-down grazing depends. So some paddocks don't automatically all slope towards the waterway, as you guys will know. And float paths are variable within a paddock, and it might actually, even though the waterway going down the paddock, the float path might go to 1/4 of that paddock, and that's your critical source there, not the whole way along the stream that's next to the paddock. That's what needs to be protected. So we need to look through the farm environment plan and make that a tailored action depending on the float path and what's actually happening, rather than just a one-size-fits-all sort of response. Working with Dairy and Z and others, plugging requirement looks unenforceable and arbitrary. It's something that we just say, just get rid of that basically. If you're controlling your critical source areas, controlling the runoff, we don't need a plugging requirement. We don't know how we're going to measure that, we don't know what the trigger points will be. And setbacks from waterways, rather than have this 5 or 20 metres between the two options and document something, let's have that tailored towards what the actual issue is, what you're trying to control, so your farm environment plan works that very much more tailored towards your farm and the issues we're trying to address.
So Dan, right, so we'll break for a couple of questions.
Absolutely.
And we can go back if we need to, so we can go back.
And look at the slide that we're having a question on. So we've got any questions on land use change or winter grazing?
We do actually have an initial question from the live stream.
Wow.
I think it was Paul or Gavin talking about fish passages. Briefly, and the impact on culverts, weirs and waterways on the farm. What do you think this will actually look like and mean? Will it mean we will have to replace them with bridges?
No, but yes.
And you ask another question, we'll look at that for us.
Come back to that. Okay, so seeing we've got one from online, we'll take 2 questions from here. Questions? Yep. It'd be really helpful if you wouldn't mind if you could say your name so we can identify who's asking questions.
Bill Thomas, this farmer. 100 hectares is not enough. There is too small. I mean, what business, if you were a manufacturer in Auckland factory, well, they get 2 acres of property, and they don't do it in any other industry in New Zealand, so that's got, the figure's got to be lifted, and I agree with the pugging. I mean, that's just a joke. And if I have to drive a tractor block the bridge off of a car, I will.
So on that building, so on that bill, Federated farmers are proposing lifting that to 100 hectares from 30. So the feedback we're getting, then even 100 hectares isn't enough of a step forward from the
100% of the property?
So that strip still stays permitted, and then you go to pick the set. So not that it will be stopped necessarily if you weren't to go through the consent process.
So there's a slight difference at the moment in Canterbury. We've got a 10% rule for winter grazing for cattle. There's a drafting date to go through the consenting regime. So this is a 15 with potentially 15% for all stocks. So whether you're running lambs or cattle or whatever, or deer, you will still get triggered in this. So it's not saying you can't do it, because there's the other rules that we haven't spoken about, which means you can carry on doing what you've always done. So you've got baseline areas, we haven't covered that in the detail yet, but if you've always grazed 70% of your property over the last 4 years, you will be able to do that. You will not be able to increase on that hectareage. So that is actually in there.
Okay, we've got a second question. Yep. Back.
David, isn't there a requirement in the proposed NES that you're not allowed to graze animals on free draining country as well? So it's not just tile drains, but one of the preferential flow paths is anything that's too free draining.
No, that was something that was proposed by the Freshwater Leaders Group. That there was their comment that they were suggesting that in the discussion document that hasn't actually made the cut to get on. So any of the officials, that is the interpretation I've got it.
Hang on, Chris, can you just put the microphone back to Ian? Hang on, Ian, hang on a sec. We'll get the microphone back to you so everybody can hear.
Oh, is this council going to be problematic already?
It's in the NES, because I read it yesterday when I was making my submission.
Point it out to us here, and I'll probably missed it.
It is possible, but Chris is involved.
It's in the same paragraph where it talks about preferential pathways and tile drains, and it also says that anything that's free draining will be excluded from wintering stock.
In the NES or in the discussion document?
Both, I think.
Okay. I haven't seen it in the NES, but I'll double check.
Thank you, Ian. Right, we'll move on.
Do you want to try and answer the question?
Oh, first question, the online question.
Yeah, so
Well,
the culverts, there's a load of controls around culverts, basically putting new culverts in, as said. Effectively, there's a huge amount of controls in terms of when you put them in, the depth, all those sort of things. There's a list of about 20 criteria to stay permitted, otherwise you have to go for consent. Same for weirs and passive flat gates, which is what they are non-compliant, so you have to apply for non-compliant consent to do those. But there is a huge amount of control now around culverts and those sort of things. Just working with those in the NES.
all right, Jeanette.
Just quickly, Jeanette Maxwell. I would like a clarification around the grazing. Does it mean a specific green feed or feed type crop for winter, or does it include break fencing on grass and pasture, for which you intensify your stock because you're breaking up the pasture pattern?
So, in terms of winter grazing, it's defined as meaning on paddock grazing where stock are grazed between May to September inclusive on an annual forage crop, regardless of whether supplementary feed is also being fed. Effectively, you're just feeding on any forage crop.
But any annual crop, so it could be annual grass.
Okay, we'll move on to wet. Move on to wetland rules.
Wetland rules. Wetland rules.
I think the really important thing is for, as Paul said, to look at the rules and submit how it affects you and talk about what you've done on your farm, which we're going to talk about more later. But the amount of stuff here is just eye-watering. So, and the complexity. So we really encourage all of you to pick up, just in case if Ian's right or we're wrong, pick it up and say it and tell us.
You're going to be wrong.
Ian's probably wrong. So. Councillor Ian.
Okay, wetland rules. What's proposed? Earthworks and vegetable clearance restrictions will apply in your wetlands. one thing we need to add in there, wetlands are already a national priority under the RMA. This is not something that's been added in, well, some wetlands are elevated. They've always been here as a priority. What they've done is they've brought in some rules around how to protect wetlands. There must be stock exclusion as of July 2021 if wetland has been identified in the council plan or by July 2023 if otherwise it meets the definition. So that's where there's a bit of work going on with Environment Canterbury. They've identified a lot of potential wetlands, and then there's some real wetlands that they know actually exist. This is going to be a bit of a problem as to what it actually means when you apply this National Environmental Standard over it. So a natural wetland includes permanently or intermittently wet areas, shallow water and land water margins, and it supports a natural ecosystem of plants and animals that are adapted for wet conditions, regardless of whether it is dominated by indigenous or exotic vegetation, and including coastal wetlands, except that it does not include wet pasture and paddocks where the water temporary ponds or rain in places dominated by pasture, or contain patches of exotic sedge or rust species, or a constructed wetland, so that there's something good in the whole thing, unless it is that constructed wetland is over a site that it used to be a natural wetland. So, or geothermal wetlands, so that doesn't apply down here.
So, issues. The wetland rules are really complicated, and they're quite contradictory. First of all, the council has to go out and identify all wetlands, so that's going to be a massive process in itself. And as Chris said, part of our worry around wetlands is the definition, what will be encompassed as a wetland. Federated Farmers has various ongoing court cases, which have on Hawke's Bay around, arguing with various groups that wet parts of paddocks that have some sedges in them, etc., rushes on wetlands, and some of those groups really want them to be defined as wetlands and then controls put around them. So there's an issue around earthworks. It's prohibited to do earthworks except for certain reasons within 100 metres of a wetland, and none apply for those other reasons. You need consent if you're using damming or diverting water, if you change the level of that wetland more than 10 centimetres. You need consent for any mechanical earthworks within the wetland. Any vegetative construction within 10 metres of a wetland is now non-complying activity. Council will, if you're going to do stuff within a wetland and you get consent, part of the conditions for that consent will now be that you need to do a wetland monitoring obligation. You need to do reports every year, etc., and monitor the ecology of the wetland and the impact you're having. That can be quite significant costs. Ecologists, etc. The regulatory impact statement, I think, undercooks the amount of wetlands that's on private property, basically. It says less than 1% are on private property. It's way more. Probably some of the national groups of workers would agree with that. So some real issues around the wetlands.
So where we're at, basically, particularly for low-intensity systems, we think there are minor implications of allowing to continue as is, and major implications of requiring exclusion. Just a nice little twist with a few QE2 covenants that have got a requirement to maintain the wetland in a more native flora and fauna, to stop the weeds, to allow require grazing to be part of that covenant. So that's going to be interesting to see what takes precedent. Needs to be more effect-based, and go back to the nice part of the building before was the short pants. Look at this wetland. What's interesting, and I forget the figures, but there's a whole lot of talking about how much wet loss land lost in the last 100 years. We've had very, very little loss in the last 2 decades. So the figures, they're very nice. They go back as far as they can to make it look really bad, but it's a loss like this, and it's a plateau, and it's hard with very little loss. In fact, we know farms are destroying, so we actually increase in some areas. There needs to be minimum size, and there needs to be less onerous earthworks against, etc. So, David, questions? You want to
we can touch on a couple of questions here, if there's questions here in the crowd. Yep, David, we've got one up there.
Willie Griffin, how we do deal with weeds in wetlands, who's going to look after those, who's going to, like if they get overgrown by blackberry, gorse, broom, how's that, you know, significant wetlands, who's going to afford that?
So, good question. Earth disturbance is allowed, if you're removing pest or weed vegetation, as long as you're using hand-held tools, then you're fine. So when you get your trowel out, you're fine, but don't get in your digger, because that'll be earth disturbance and you'll have to go through the fencing regime, basically. That's where they've defined it at the moment.
Got any other questions on wetlands? Yeah, right.
Yeah, James.
Hang on, Michael. Hang on.
Believe it or not all wetlands are on flat land. Some of them are on quite steep land where you've got springs and all sorts of things. You can't put a fence in many of these areas without doing quite substantial earthworks. So what do you do?
Absolutely. So those seepage areas and the gullies, we have a real issue with those being captured as wetlands. We're looking at the Wairarapa plan at the moment, and it's a grey area where they're going to be included as wetlands, and then we've got issues around fencing around those. And part of our issue with these wetlands rules and the fencing rules in itself is actually the amount of earthworks and other work that would have to go on will probably do more damage than leave them where they are at the moment. So we've got to get that balance right. Totally agree.
Great, thank you. All right. In the absence of other questions, we'll move on.
Right, so this is a water text view. So part of the requirements in the NES is for farmers to do a freshwater component of a farm plan. So they've moved away from calling it farm environment plan, calling it farm plan, and this is a freshwater module. Schedule 1 catchments, which are those identified in the NES that have got high nitrogen without rules, and it can't be used in one of those, have to do a farm environment plan within 2 years of the commencement date of NES, likely next year if it goes through. But more importantly, every farm over 20 hectares has to do one by 2025. There's a huge amount of criteria, there's pages of what's in the farm environment plan. I've listed some of it there, so you have to go through a normal process, map out everything, map out your waterways, your critical source areas, as was defined before in the winter stock grazing, that sort of thing. Look at an assessment across all the different things that can affect those critical source areas. So there's a whole list there, and then schedule the actions on what you're going to do to basically minimise the risk on freshwater ecosystems and the timescales to do all those actions on. So it's quite an open I'm going to say checkbook, but it probably is, an open set of actions that you have to work through. And you have to avoid remedy or mitigate the loss of contaminants, which is RMA terms, but work through how you're going to stop the impact of the losses, whether it's sediment, E. coli, phosphorus or nitrogen, from your property on those critical source areas and all the risks, etc. Depending how that's done, some of that might be okay, some of it might be, probably will be very onerous. Part of the issue is farm environment plans have to be certified and audited by a certified farm environment planner that's certified by a national central government scheme by the two ministers. You can't get your own on it, it has to be certified in the scheme, which doesn't exist yet. And you have to then have audits every 2 years once you've got your farm environment plan effectively. Once you've done an audit, the results go to the regional council. It's not clear what they do with them, but you have to put your results in and then get the audited, depending how good you are on your audit every so often, effectively. So some issues, I suppose the major issue, there's some real devil in detail on what you have to do in a farm environment plan, and you know, we want farmers to be a good management practice, but we mustn't make farm environment plans onerous and regulatory and a real problem to do. We need to get on doing stuff rather than working on bureaucracy. Major issue is we just don't have the capability or capacity nationwide to achieve all these farm environment plans by 2025. We're talking tens of thousands of farmers across all sectors, across arable, across dry stock, across dairy, that would have to be done. And existing frontier farm environment plans don't have an answer, I'm afraid to say. That would have to be redone by certified. So if you've got an existing farm environment plan where it's a level 1 or 2 been for land, farm environment plan for dry stock, or Fonterra farm environment plan, it'll probably have to be redone with a certified farm environment plan.
So, Paul, if I'd like to retrain farm environmental planner,
You'll make lots of money.
That's what
when will I be able to start? And how long will it take me to get there? And is it automatically that I'll be able to do it?
well, if you went off to university now, Chris, they'll let you into some mature category, I'm sure. The 3 years of training, I would imagine, you've then got to have 3 years of experience under under these proposals. So in 6 years' time, you'll be able to start helping, which will probably miss the 2025 deadline.
But I don't get on very well with the minister, so what do you need through?
Oh no, you won't be certified. Actually, that's a good point. No chance. No chance at all.
The minister has to certify every farm environment plan, so that is just keeping the level quite high.
It's okay, Chris, it might count both of us out.
So the last point on that.
I like to build bigger giants. There's too many rules.
Yep.
Too much there, too much rules on it.
Yep.
Bigger giants will have to be required.
There will be. A little message on the last bit there. So
To get rid of the social construction as well.
it does sound very much like central planning, I agree. A really good lesson, the good farming practice action plan for water bottle was class 7 or 8 there, was it? So there was a statement there, retire all class 7 and 8 there. And some stuff people on this, one listening and one on the other end. We completely dug out, was it only me, was it?
That was me.
Both. We completely only dug our toes in and said there's no bloody way we're putting our logo into something that says that. And one of the levy organisations thought it was fine, the one that has black and whites, because they actually looked and realised that quite a lot of their sand country is class 7. That now is becoming codified, if we're not careful. Now, what we thought was guidance has ended up by being rules, which meant if it wasn't feds, we would have had something that said, in your farm plan you have to retire all class 7 and 8 men. So I'm sure you'll be really happy about that. So that's the dangers of enthusiastic people in Wellington, unlike me, who don't know what they're talking about. So, what do we reckon? So you may have heard Mr O'Connor talk about as one of his pet ideas, which has got some merit, which is called integrated farm planning. The idea of that is to see if we can bring environment planning, biosecurity planning, animal welfare into a more integrated plan that would mean that farmers would only have to put data and information into a big black box once. We had to make sure the farmers controlled that data and who used it, but would actually, and would have a lot more standardisation around plans. But the trouble with what this proposal is that it's trying to get every farm to go for a farm plan, which is just ridiculous, and it won't work. So what do we say? We say start where the problems are. Prioritise. Start with the project in catchments where there is a known problem or an emergent problem. And work them through, trial them there, work closely with the farmers, get all the data that's sorted out, and get them to a practical and driven by farmers. And don't try and do it to save the world. Just start where the problem is and allow them to be owned by farmers. And then it will become a plan in the sense of something that you as farmers are doing to improve your problems. And there's nothing wrong with that, it's fine. But if and it shouldn't be considered activity. So there's a dilemma here. For us, we would say let's just not have any of the rules or anything else, but we have the opportunity here to control. I should declare I am a hill country sheep beef farmer, so you think I kind of understand what you're talking about. So this becomes a really critical point. Do the farmers control our own destiny, or does the government control it? So, in our view is get practical farm plans that work. And Chris's favourite saying, make them sensible, practical and affordable. And if we can get that, then we'll start moving forward. Now we may have to, at the bottom there, go for saying 2022, 10 highest catchments, 2025 priority catchments, 2030 all farm plans. Now it might all farm planning a plan. Now hopefully by 2030 that farm plan is really simple, it's logical, it's basically good farming practice, putting it in terms that we can all agree with, and it doesn't need a consent. We open up questions.
Yep, some questions. So, have we got any questions on the freshwater module of farm plans? No, we're all happy there.
Can I?
Yep.
Because this is a dilemma that feeds us every single day of our lives, is how do we make sure we're moving forward in a positive way and making positive contributions to the environment, not seen as being laggards, which is what the Minister said this is going to be going for, and yet he doesn't for us. I mean, what is people's views of farm plans? We'd like a little feedback, because if they are practical and sensible and affordable, is that okay? Is that something that should be going down? Is it something we'd rather be in a farm plan process that keep controlling themselves, and that means that there's a degree of compulsion in doing something, but it's in your hands, not in the council's hands?
Okay, so let's take a show of hands, shall we? So who here today that's farming has got a farm plan in place? Okay, so that'll be about half people here. So if you don't have a farm, sorry.
Can I ask how many did it totally voluntarily? How many did it reluctantly, but it's a damn good idea now? And how many did it just because you had to?
Okay, so of the people that have...
how many keep the speed limit because it's a bloody good idea? How many keep the speed limit because you know there's a chance of getting caught?
And who just drives?
And who just drives that bloody help and comes back?
Yep. Okay, so we've got a question here.
It's not a question, but
do you mind asking if you can state your name?
when the commissioner brought out the new water strategy, the Morpeth and the irrigation company adopted the new strategy. So all new water actually had to form a farm plan, and it all had to be audited. One of our consultants actually did, one of the first, they did a 3-year audit in my farm. Now I'm an all pasture farmer, no undercropping, and I don't import food. My leaching actually, according to them, is only 14 or 15 kgs, right? Way down lower than the perception of people looking at it in the industry. There's another farm down the road from me higher inputs, and they were 45. But these things are already being done and approved. I had to do a farm plan when I took over the cropping farm. The same one that the council actually had to maybe get a resource to change the land use. So I had to do a farm plan way back there in 95. Now, we could probably produce a template. You're just asking me, the questions of what you need to look for, and you can do it yourself.
I think the answer is yes. We want to have a simple template based on the local situation, what you're trying to achieve. Control. The trouble is, you can get a driver's license in this right? So, we know what a driver's license looks like, we know what a passport looks like, we don't know what a farm plan looks like. And the fear is that it's the top-down national farm plan that's not. Use this word, you hate it, bespoke. Use this for the officials, they use it all the time. What it means is flexible, it's tailor-made for the local conditions. And they've been talking bespoke for the last decade, and now they're talking another word, I have no other thing, but it's basically X opposite of bespoke. The opposite of flexible, tailor-made, and that's the fear we've got. Try and make a national plan or national standard to try and fit the whole country, you'll base it on the worst case scenario.
Gavin, aren't farm plans always going to be far more effective if farmers are engaged in the process and have ownership of that farm plan rather than being dictated to by a committee in Wellington?
Correct, and not all Wellingtonians are there. So, exactly, but I guess the issue we had, and that's the question earlier, is I kind of, when I drive, I keep the speed limit because I don't like getting caught in tickets, generally speaking. But there is a point when I've driven in Europe a while ago and I feel uncomfortable when I go to a certain speed, and I've driven in Northern Territory, there's no speed limit. And there is a degree of self-regulation in some of that stuff, particularly because it's kangaroos. But we always know there's a little, when we were involved in the discussions, and I was in early discussions around these things at the end of May till we got thrown out of the process. And it was really interesting. Then the language was really clear. We just want a bottom line that catches the bad bastards. And we want the rest to be on incentivising good farming practice. And I said to one of the ministers the other day, they've turned, and I said I'm an old bugger, so I hate to think of these terms. They've taken all the A-grade students and given the paper to say they're now Ds. So that's the real issue. How do we make sure that there are no farmers in this room like this, but the few that are letting them down, that they do actually take up the shit out? But let's the rest of you carry on and look at how you continue to improve. And that's by peer pressure and relevant practice things yourselves. Minister O'Connor's talking about integrated farm plans done that way, and Mr. Parker's talking about something different. They both sign off on the paper that says what we do.
I think, sorry, David, I think one of our positions is if farmers like yourselves in this area that have got regional plans that want to farm bio plans and work through that, then that should be acceptable national highways. You've done it already, we shouldn't have to go and redo it. If the regional plan requires it, it's being done, particularly the interim. We need to get that clear.
But we don't know. We'll say that, but we don't know.
Okay, so the proposal here is that we would support a more sensible and realistic time frame to put farm plans in place and target them for the more vulnerable and risky farming systems to start with. So those of you who don't have a farm plan currently, do you think we're on the right track with that process, or are you opposed to farm plans full stop? Put your hands up if you haven't got a farm plan and you wouldn't want to get one.
And please be honest, don't say what you think you should say.
Okay, so you're all really engaged in this. Oh, I've got one down here, that's fair enough.
I don't think people will be prepared to put their hand up for that one.
No, that's probably fair. Okay.
Fairness.
Probably an unfair question, sorry. Right. We'll try on.
Our answers usually have no trouble telling us what they think.
Stop exclusion. Feels like I've been doing that for 26 years now.
Yeah, we have a problem with previous government.
So stop exclusion, that was something that came up during the Land and Water Forum when it was allowed to function. And we went through what they call a small flexi group, and we chewed over ideas about where would stop exclusion apply. And we went down a rabbit warren which was just looking at slope. And how could you define, because it's national stop exclusion, one of them comes to the other, how would this slope work? And then we went down this rabbit warren, and we went right to, it was about 3 or 4 months before this last election. We couldn't make the thing work. Doesn't matter how you looked at it, just by using slope, it was all over the place. So we had lots to do with it. There was a lot of meetings to try and get better language. What could you do to make this thing work? At least it was going to give us some consistency across the country. So anyhow, what's being proposed in this one here is probably, when you look at it on paper, not too bad. However, the exclusion is only for dairy and beef cattle, deer and pigs, and it's from waterways, so that intermittent or permanent, so that covers quite a few of them. Lakes and wetlands. You're going to have an average setback of 5 metres, but a minimum of 1 metre. Now, this is giving you a really good clear vision about your farm, whether it's going to be right or wrong. Whether wider than a metre and not ephemeral, they've got no active bed. On a low slope land parcels, or for the dairy cattle, or potential for carrying or if it's the potential carrying capacity of the land is greater than 14 from the farm scale or 18 for the paddock scale stock units. Remember, this is potential, and you think, how do they come up to this potential? Anyhow, it does not currently capture the artificial watercourses, irrigation canals, but it will capture drains if they are modified watercourse. The drought stock exclusions from rivers, lakes, and wetlands that do not meet the definition above, ephemeral and smaller water bodies, are to be considered part of the farm environment plan. The deadlines for the completion ends on the stop time. So what's good about the proposals? Doesn't require the planting, which has got the still talking stock exclusion.
Can I just interrupt?
I didn't ask you.
I do it all the time. The really important thing to realise is that there are other people submitting to this. It just struck me. We're assuming this is the worst you can get. It's not. So we have to make sure we're really strong on what we say. So Chris has just said, I bet your bottom dollar somebody will be submitting it, but it should be planting required as well. And that might come out as a leader's planting, right?
Oh, absolutely. I've gone through a plan change in Waikato through the hearings, which is at the hearing stage, and there was certain groups there who were asking for 10 and 20 metre setbacks from wetlands and waterways.
And planting.
And planting.
And to plant anything adjacent to this, you could be up to $30,000, $40,000 per hectare. So the dollars soon start ramping up. So we were always, the land water forum was always about just keep the bastards out of the water. Doesn't care how you do it, that's where you're going to make the biggest environmental gain. So we always kept that as our mantra. Actually, it was Bryce Johnson who used that mantra, but we picked up on it. So it only applies to cattle, deer and pigs. Sheep are proposed, they going to be excluded from the regulations. It has slope distinctions with tougher rules and timeframes for the low slope land. It doesn't specify permanent fencing, that's good. Enables other measures such as temporary fences and electric fences, smart collars with electric fencing. So some of the new technologies that could potentially come out. In lowlands, it won't have such a big impact as most of those streams are already fenced either through the Sustainable Area Accord or in Canterbury through our water plan. But probably not to the 5 metre setback. So transitioning times are provided for. You get the best bit, Paul?
Yes. What is it? So, we have issues with having to remove fences, basically. So at the moment it's proposed if your fences are less than 2 metres or 1 metre minimum, you've got to move them out to 5 metres by 2025, otherwise by 2023. That's a significant cost and time, and we think the output benefit. The whole rationale of this proposal seems to be around stock exclusion and sediment control, yet it seems to have weaved in a whole huge amount of setbacks, which on flat land particularly want to control your sediment and your other issues. As I said, the slope area, I'm going to go into that in a little minute to show you an online tool we've got so you can work out for yours. It's done on potential stock unit capacity if you're above that low slope threshold.
So you can be good at what you're assumed to be.
Yep. So it's not what piece of cattle you've got in at the time, it's what potential of the cattle you could put on that land. So that's not very effects-based at all. Your land can say, do 20 stock units, you happen to have 1 beefy per hectare wander around for whatever reason, you still have to defend.
So particularly a crop on that would be quite a lot of stuff.
Yeah, it's not clear when it. Yeah, maybe
it's evil.
As Chris said, drains. So the MFE officials keep saying drains not captured. Well, under the definition of rivers in the RMA, modified watercourses are captured. A lot of drains. I'm based in Waikato, a lot of drains up there, modified watercourses. I mentioned a lot of drains down here, modified watercourses. Some are artificial watercourses, but more and more over time, council considers those drains as modified watercourses. So they will get captured if they're over the metre and an intermittent or permanent. So if ephemeral, they're not captured. Ephemeral normally means it hasn't got an active bed. That normally means it's grassed all year round. So those sort of swells and depressions that get water in a few days a year, they're ephemeral waterways effectively. They're not captured. Anything that's intermittent that's got an active bed, so a non-grass bed or permanent, will be captured as over the metre. You still have to look at all the others within your final environment plan, so they're still captured, but not within this report. The average slope per title is used in this. So when we've dealt with this previously with previous governments, trying to work out slope per paddock is very problematic. Slope calculations are just very problematic. So this regulation seems to have gone the whole other way and decided they're doing an average slope over the whole title. That's problematic because if you've got a massive title, and some areas, particularly hill country and high country, have massive titles, and you happen to have some decent flat land up to 10 degrees, you could have a very steep land, your average amount could still be over 10 degrees. And all the waterways in the whole title are then captured irrelevant of whether they're on steep or flat land. I'll show you some of that in the map in a minute. As was discussed before, there's a huge impact around wetlands. All wetlands have to have this 10 metre exclusion around, depending on the definition of wetlands and how many of them, that's going to be pretty onerous. And as I said, it doesn't account for that flooding risk and the fact that waterways actually move, particularly in the hill country and other issues around that. So there's maps on the MFE website that show you the stock exclusion zones. So on this map, which is from MFE, the yellow is the 1 to 5 degrees, the orange is the 5 to 7 degrees land, and the red is the 7 to 10 degrees land. And you see vast amounts of Canterbury, that's in the hill country, and Southland are captured under those definitions. Zoom in a little bit on Canterbury. This is the fence tool, which I'm going to show you in a minute. So the colours are different, so apologies for that. The green is the flat area. Anything with, and it's doing the outline of the green titles, so it's everything within them. And then we've got the orange and the yellow. So that shows you we're talking about quite big areas, as you would expect in the flat areas, but actually even going up into some of the high country foothills in the hill country, it starts getting captured. What I'm hoping will work now, we'll see, is
kid.
Yeah, I need a techie. Right. Right, what we've got, and it's brilliant. Coming back up. We've effectively put together an interactive online mapping tool. I need a password. Most of you will be members, obviously, so you'll have access to an online tool. If you're not you've got to put the password down here. If you're not a member, we've got territory managers here that will sell you the membership at a very reasonable price, so you can look at the mapping tool. We'll be back in a minute. We're nearly near the end, so that's...
Here we go.
Oh, you had one job.
What about the question about the wetlands?
Yeah, let's have a question on that one.
Serious question.
So they're just the 3 proposals. So they propose whether it's up to 5 degrees, 5 to 7 or 7 to 10 as an average slope of the title basically. So it's just the 3 proposals in the document.
And unfortunately here in New Zealand, because I didn't understand the rule, we've supported a higher slope.
Yes.
David, what are we going to do about the wild pigs? Does this mean DOC's going to have to pick up its game?
That would be quite an obligation upon the taxpayer to have to exclude all wild pigs from waterways. Minister Sage may have to extend the DOC budget. Right, have we got any other questions while we're trying to sort the tech out?
Here's one.
Hi, Murray Blaine. Well, Murray, it's not working. Stand up and yell. No, just stand up and yell.
Murray Bland, if you have a waterway that's along a boundary fence and it's only a metre away, how are you supposed to shift that to stay within the laws?
Right. Did everybody hear that question? The question was, if you have a watercourse along the boundary fence, how do you then get the 5 metre setback to fence it? Gavin or Chris?
That'll be the neighbour's problem, won't it?
I think that's the sort of practical thing that you feed in. Those are the sorts of really good, gnarly, practical questions that you need to feed in. To show you that, you know, this is sometimes, people have good intentions, but they can't get it in the regulation. Paul's just about there. But when we tried to get, not sure. You right, Dave? Paul, ready to go?
Yes.
So I spent an hour with Minister Smith and his chief advisor trying to figure out what 3 parts of the previous stock exclusion regulation meant, and we couldn't agree. And that was not because either of us were dumb, that's why it wasn't, but because these things are really, really difficult to describe in the regulation, and the second you try and do it, you come foul, and that's exactly why things like 5 metre setbacks become crazy. And also the slope. So we tried to define slope of the paddock by the percentage of the paddock that's flat, or less than this. No, it was a percentage of the paddock was under a certain slope, was it? Or was it?
Yeah, 28% of the paddock
Was so my Hill Country farm had paddocks caught because it had a whole lot of flat tops and terraces, but the creeks were at the bottom of the gullies. So this is the problem we have. So this is the solution. And Paul's going to show you why it's really no better. In fact, worse. But we did get more.
I think this one's got worse because they've done this whole title approach. So this is the mapping tool we've done. So that got sent out Friday, the Friday Flash for members. So you get access to this tool. We've basically taken the areas that are mapped within the regulation, and the way the regulation is written, if they're mapped, you're in. You don't go and decide the slope. If it's mapped, it's in. So these areas you're in or out, basically. And we put it on an overlay, and we put some tools so you can actually work out for your area what's going on. So you can put an address in, or you can just zoom in and look at what's going on here. So we've got Canterbury here. The different colours. The load, it takes a while. The different colours are, the orange is the 7 to 10, the green is up 5, and the yellow is the 5 to 7.
So to be clear, what it's done is identify that property as a certain slope and drawn a colour around it.
And it's decided for your slopes whether you're in or not, basically. Chris, where's that arrow before that was in here?
Just go straight up.
So, where it gets interesting is you'd expect the very flat land to be compassable and captured by this. As you can see, all these purple areas with the green outline, the flat areas. When you start going into some of the foothills, I suppose, if you've got big properties that happen to have a bit of flat land, but then a bit of a slope, and we've got one in the middle there, because that title on the right has quite a lot of flat land, it's a massive title, then on the left it's got more foothills, the whole of it's captured, and the blue lines are the indicative waterways, according to the map. When we look through them, they're very random. They capture everything, not waterways, they've got some roads and God knows what else. But they're indicative of what happens. And we've got 1,000-hectare farms on some of these, 2,000, 3,000, with hundreds of kilometres of waterways that potentially get captured. So that property, for example, has got some flat land, but then it's got a hill country. If the average is below that 10, all of it's captured. It's irrelevant whether that waterway is down next to a slopey area or not, it's just captured. It'll be triggered within these rules. So if you want to go on this, you can put your address in, you can wander around, you can then have a look if you're captured or not. As you see, quite a lot of country where you wouldn't necessarily expect it to be captured gets captured, and that's pretty problematic from a policy point of view, what they're trying to do, what they're trying to actually work through for this area, all the way to compressor. So you've got that area up there. That's just captured under this proposal. So some people are going to push for 10, 15 degrees. As soon as you've got to get 15 degrees average, you're going to capture slopes up to 30 degrees and more. So before you to go and have a look at that tool, try and get back to non-shipping.
Oh, you've done it.
I'm broken it again. Just go roll down. Now there's a refresh for you, just quickly. If you missed anything, just there. Nope, there we go. Right, that was that property I just did a capture just in case it didn't work. There you go, and position. Right, you, Gavin? You're on your position. Okay, so it should be about keeping stock out of water. You'll notice that some environmental groups have now said, oh, well, actually keeping stock out of water wasn't really important. It's flagging us for how many decades for having stock of water. So stock exclusion should be effective, but that's what the law should require. It should tell you how to do it. It should say that's the outcome, and the only way to be held accountable is to stop giving water long as it obviously breaks for a fence or something else. So it means you can use any means that you want to. A 1 metre setback should be left as a minimum, no average, because it's going to be tailor-made to particular source areas. We've already got a win on the re-fencing because both ministers always said, oh no, you know we're going to have to put out fences, so we know you're very good at preparing fences, so they're going to last forever. But the problem is that ministers have said that you're going to have to put out fences, but is that what's going to be in the final document? We don't know. So we have to make sure they keep their word on that. Slope threshold needs to be 5 degrees, but it must be probably like that, so with people. Otherwise, as I say, those that have got a hill country with lots of plateau areas, it's surprising how quickly a large proportion of the paddock is flat. You might think it's a flat paddock, but when you actually overlay, the slope actually doesn't go far. You go to the slope, terrace down like that. Actually, 50% to be flat is quite easy on actual stock units, not potential. Risk comes up at the end, it's affordable. And if there are existing stock rules, sleeping rules in place, they shouldn't be overridden. I don't know whether we've asked, but I suspect that by now, just about very, very few councils have got rules in place. Every day, there's no point.
So that's probably a good way to, maybe, to get a bit of a survey. Does the audience think that Canterbury's got pretty good rules and should stay there, or do you think that we need to do more or do less?
Yeah, so broadly, everybody, we're well down the journey with the Canterbury Land and Water Plan. That's been a document that's been widely consulted on through all of our communities. It's then been tested in the Court of Law, and it's in place with plan changes coming up in various particular zones, but it's tailored through the zone committee process, through the community consultation process, to fit the needs of our communities, socially, economically and environmentally. So who here supports the framework that we've got under the Canterbury Land and Water Plan?
Does anybody think it's too tough? Honestly, please. Too tough?
It's too tough.
So you're just talking about the stock exclusion?
Yeah.
Just the stock exclusion aspect of it? Yeah.
So, do you think, this is a later question, our policy is basically saying, look, we're the dairy farmers for the dairy platform providers about, right? If you're beef farming and having the same potential features, you shouldn't be treating different. That makes sense? Yeah. So that's kind of where we're trying to end up with the exclusion one should be an intensity base, and the dairy platform was easy because that kind of had it synonymous with certain intensity base. If you're running a beef operation, you shouldn't be treated any different because
Actually, no, officials haven't figured out. But that's okay, they'll figure that out eventually.
I think there'd be very few farmers that wouldn't support the concept that intensively farmed cattle, whether they be dairy or beef cattle, if they're behind an electric fence being intensively grazed, they should be excluded from the waterway.
They already are?
Yeah, if they're behind a wire out. So, how to submit? Paul, can you give us a rundown on how we tackle this monster?
Right. So, obviously, Feds and other organisations will be comprehensively submitting. Hence this discussion, the discussion we have to get the mandate from our members, and the work we're doing on it. As an individual farmer, you don't need to understand the policy intricacies of the MPS and the knock bands, etc. It's about trying to explain the impacts and the costs to you on the farm, and maybe the rural community as well, and how it will cut across what you're already doing. So it might be, particularly here in Canterbury, you've got quite well developed regional plans already. We just discussed the fencing. You guys are getting on fencing for farm alignment plans. How these things will override and conflict with what you're already doing, and they're not necessarily fit for purposes. So you need to be constructive in those. You need to go through your on-farm principles and the things you're working through, whether it's around your plans for the farm, how you're going to hand the farm on, and what you've got planned into the future, how this will cut across it, or the actual implications closer in time around cost, etc. We've got 2 submission templates on our website to guide you through that submitting to help. So if you go to the Fed Farmers webpage, fedfarm.org.nz, there's an Essential Fresh Water page. If you click through that, it's got a lot of guidance around all the MPS and NES. We've got a snapshot, as I said before. We've also got some submission templates to help you. The other organisations have as well. And that gives you some prompts around those key areas and help you work through putting a submission together. It doesn't have to be massive. It just has to be pertinent to your farm and to get through what you want to do. You can complete the 81 MFE questions if you want to. That's another way of doing it. They're fairly loaded and a bit futile, but good luck.
Yeah, we'll make sure if you think it's loaded, say you think it's loaded in yellow. Don't be lead them to go, oh, maybe I won't answer that one, I don't know what we're trying to say.
And then you just put your, by the end of the month, put your submission either online or email it through to that email address. If you go to MFE or our webpage, there's all the details around that. So don't be scared. We actually want as many farmers to put their submissions in as possible, to put their story forward. They don't have to be massive submissions by any case. It's around personalising it to your circumstances, and you might agree with some of the stuff in here, what you agree with, what you don't agree with, and why, and also give a bit of story around the farm, the stuff you're actually doing environmentally. I think we need to get through to the officials and government that farmers are doing stuff. There's a presumption within this whole discussion document that we've had massive intensification, it's not had a handbasket, farmers not doing anything, so we have to step in and sort it out. We need to cut that down and show that farmers are getting on doing stuff. And the proposals on here, from our point of view, don't hit the mark and will cut across the economically, particularly the rural community, so we need to take a bit of a stand.
So in your submission, you really need to come in if you can and support Federated Farmers submission. And that there actually opens the door to lots of other discussions, or it also empowers us even more to know that there's more weighting behind us with our membership. You can also have your own words around your own thing. There's nothing worse than a template where there's 10,000 submissions that have cut and pasted exactly the same words. They get open a bin that's over there that's nowhere near as important as what your story is.
They'll treat those as one submission already. They're pro forma, so you do need to do your own. We can't write words for you, need to do your own.
So that's where you can say the same general things. You don't have to go into a great essay or story if you don't want to, but to say that you've got discomfort with this, you're doing a lot of environmental stuff. There's a lot of leading things on our template that can actually just prompt you as to what you need to say. We can just generally oppose some aspects of the discussion document and say, well, that's going to be far too onerous. Or the time frames to get there, although they might be quite honourable and great intentions to get there, there's just no way we can get and still pay the bills and look after the local school and everything else that's going on. So or just talk about your local community. That is the story that we need to hear.
So that's good. Thank you, Chris. So, show of hands times again. So those of you here, would you put your hand up if you feel confident or empowered to write your own submission and plan to do so? Good third of people, you think? Okay.
I plan to do so, David, but I don't feel very bloody confident about it.
I'm sure you'll make your views well known.
Depends how you ask the question.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, this is important. All of us are running businesses that are going to be impacted by this. We need to have our voice spoken, our voice heard. And don't think for a moment that your voice is not going to be heard. It's your right in this process to make your view known. It's the only way you can impact this.
So there's some really important things. These are not like legal submissions where some of you might have got involved about status and all those sort of things. If you're on the point, you know, it's relevant, it's in them. So you don't need a lawyer, you don't need any expert to write this. In fact, the more it is about your experience, the better. The more it shows the variety of farming situations, the better, because that more gives us the argument that actually the top-down isn't the right approach. To some extent, more variable some of the submissions are in the sense of circumstances to be. And I think the fencing stuff will win, but it would still be good to say, look, I've spent so many $1,000, we're getting a bit of a survey, I've spent so many $1,000, spent so many K of fencing. I figure I have to pull it out.
Stop exclusion in here, stop exclusion fencing here. It's about stop exclusion.
Yes, but what will we end up at?
Stop
It's got a
exclusion.
fence. You've got a fence, you have to shift it out. Correct? So, but think of some of the other things and what it says, you're seeking to quantify that.
Absolutely. So that's where it's important to tell your own story. What stock exclusion means for your particular property and the landscape that you've got on your property. What farm environment plans are going to mean for you. What a freshwater module and oversee is going to cost within your business. But also, if we go right back to the start, what in Canterbury does a dissolved nitrogen of 1 mean for your business? What's the difference in your budget for the 2020 financial year in your existing farming operation versus a budget on your farm running dryland breeding ewes and beef cows? That's what you need to get across to government. That is not an extrapolation, that is what the proposal says. So you need to get across to government what your financial position looks like if you have to be farming dryland ewes or breeding cows, whether that be in 5 years' time or 25 years' time. Your farm and your business goes onto a straight line from here to there. And that likely would be the end of all development, all expenditure. If you've got a cow shed, you'd likely run the cow shed down to the point where it wouldn't be being used. So that's what you've got to get across. That's what's being proposed here. You need to tell your story. This is your chance. So we'll go to some questions. We've got 2 online that we'll get, and then we're going to open the... Oh, sorry, hang on. Before we do that, you've seen what we've been proposing here tonight. I'd like a show of hands of who believes that we as Federated Farmers are on the right track in representing your position, your concerns.
I'll get that one, I'll say it's 100%.
Thank you. Okay, 2 questions online. Rebecca, can you help us with those?
Sure. So, live question. Stephen Todd asks, what's the impact on cropping around waterways and on slopes? Is there a summer and winter crop differential?
There is no summer crop and winter crop.
Yeah, so the intensification rules are only for winter cropping.
Excellent.
Cropping, what was the other bit?
That's all he was asking, was there a differentiation between summer and winter crops?
Just a winter crop.
Yeah, it's just a crop.
Waterways and slopes. Sure.
So,
And
hang on that, I'm going to ask a question to that. within the farmlands in sediment and phosphorus vulnerable zones, is there likely to be restrictions on cultivation of land with slope?
Possibly, yes. So that's a good point. So the intensive winter grazing rules are a separate rule, and that's just for those grazing between May and September on that annual forage crop. You're right. What's an unknown quantity is in the farm environment plans, because you have to minimise, remedy, reduce your contaminants. What's going to be expected to do could potentially be setbacks from cultivation. We're seeing that in some regional plans now. Particularly on sloping your land, restrictions when you can do it, how you do it, etc. So you're going to have to, for those critical soils there, those higher risk activities, so as you call it, you're going to have to put a plan forward that would be acceptable to that certified farm environment planner that you remedy or mitigated those or address those risks. We haven't seen those farm environment plans. We don't know that the scheme doesn't exist yet, so we don't know how rigorous that's going to be, but potentially, actually, there's going to be some quite potential action that can take place.
One thing that's worth noting on that also is the words avoid, remedy and mitigate. The way they've been lined up in the draft documents are different where at the moment under the RMA you balance up between avoid, remedy and mitigate. There's no hierarchy. This way there's a hierarchy. It's avoid. You can't avoid it, you remedy it. If you can't remedy it, you mitigate it. So you come down to that. You can't. And this one just goes to the mitigate. You've got to do all of that. There's a subtle difference that's come into this. So what that means and how it stitches together is going to be.
The people that wrote Jeremiah were very smart. It's not bad as a legislation to start off, but they put 3 words in different orders deliberately, so people couldn't do that. So use about what's the section 5 Paul use?
Sustainable development.
No, that's got 3s. Use, development, and protection.
Protection. Yeah.
So we could say use is the most important one. Develops to come next and protection to last. So they were very deliberate. There's Ian on here. There's certain parts of the RMA where there's 3 key phrases and they deliberately jumbled them up. So that people couldn't read and say it was order and preference, because they knew everyone would try and say it was order and preference. So one area they did it that way, another area they did it the other way, another area they did it another way. And that was one of them. So I'm old enough and talking to the authors.
Okay, second question online.
Last online question from Steve Monard. If 2020 comes and we vote these Labour mongrels out, does that make the fresh water go away?
Doesn't make the issue go away. The issue is, yes, any future government can change. So the getting it right is really important. So the answer is not as simple as voting government, because the answer has to be, how can we, jobs I think we've been doing, how can we convince the general public and those in control that actually farmers are doing the right thing. Can I put something up? I think what's happened is there's been a huge expansion of dairy and blame for a lot of areas. That's slowed down. A lot of stabilisation is occurring, a lot of improvement of water quality is starting to come through. And there's agreed, somebody wants to claim that by changing the rules now.
Yeah.
Actually, if we let what's happening now, with a few more tweaks in here, we will actually get a good result out of the reading. We have to realise that there are increasing pressures on us as farmers to do the right thing, and doing the right thing is different to what I did when I was farming, and different to what my father did when my grandmother was farming. So they used to put dips in the creeks. Okay, don't do that.
We're all going to go to the same place eventually. It's whether we go there with a higher quality regulated process, or we're going to go through the good management practices and our own values or markets driven. We're going to eventually get to where we're going.
But it's not a definite one. No, it's not going back to pre-human occupation of water quality. but it's going forward to something better than we used to. We used to pour royal sewage into water breaks. We used to do a lot of things. We've stopped doing a lot of those things.
Cities
So-
still do.
Sorry?
Cities still do.
And cities, not raw, but treated.
Very close to raw.
Yeah. They sometimes they're allowed to do raw once a year, usually. Yeah. So I guess the issue is we're not happy with what this government is proposing, but it doesn't mean we can kind of just throw them out and not carry on. None of us want to do that, right? So the answer is always, how can we take control of ourselves?
So a question for you, the three of you. Given that we're all on a journey here in Canterbury, and we're engaged in the Canterbury Land and Water regional planning process, and that's got stage reductions ahead of us, and we're on target for those, have we not missed an opportunity, given that we're engaged here in Canterbury in this, have we not missed out on an opportunity to roll the Canterbury Land and Water Plan out nationwide to the councils that don't have plans and get the same level of engagement that we've got here in Canterbury, whereas we've now ended up locked in an adversary process because we've had a set of targets put in front of us that are unachievable?
I'd probably disagree with that. I'd say the Canterbury Land and Water Plan is something that's taking our community along with it. And if you go and put that in another area, you're going to have completely different drivers that you're trying to manage, whether it be hill country settlement and, let's say, Gisborne, and forestry and all the other things. They're going to engage in that process in a completely different way and have different drivers and have good water quality outcomes. What we need is something that's going to be quite hard in a way, but it focused the hearts and minds that we're going to get our water quality to all our community aspirations. But if you go through some of those meetings that were held in the high school or being on the zone committee, actually hearing those hard conversations, the farmers are driving the process now, they're taking ownership of what they want to do.
I guess I phrased that slightly wrongly, Chris. That's exactly what I was meaning was what the process that we've been through in Canterbury for the communities to drive the process could have been replicated nationwide.
So, absolutely, and I think it is. I mean, I think to various degrees. So, Waikato, we've just gone through PC1, the hearings. That's 6 years to get to the hearings, $10 million, and it'll go to environment court, right? So we'll keep going through that. Kaikoura's going through a process. Gisborne's just done a water plan. We're just redoing the one plan in Horizons because that didn't work. So we'll redo that. Wellington's going through its first stage of its water plan, and it's going to go through a 5-2 catchment plan after that. So from my point of view, I think this is what frustrates me, I think, with this document is actually some too slowly, we're probably taking too long in some catchments to get around to it, some regions. Places like yourself are well developed, but we are going through the process. The council probably haven't had enough tools from central government. It's a costly, it's a complicated, we haven't had the monitoring data, we haven't had the science, it's been part of the problem, so it's a hard problem. But I think that most councils are trying to get to grips with some of the existing NPS, and this just cuts across that. So I think it throws all that out, and that's what's so frustrating about it.
But I don't think anybody would say that the RMA process is worth. But we've got to come up with something better, and that's we can't come up with something worse. It would be nice to come up with something better. And so my guys, I manage the whole policy team, and I don't think any of them think it's a good process. But will be actually something that works. So it would have been nice if the government said, we see the pain, we see it's not working as well, there has been a lot of complaints about it not working as well, and come up with an inclusive process that's better, rather than rushing an exclusive process that works. So it's really clear there's been a whole lot of work groups set up behind the scenes to produce these documents. None of those working groups have been allowed to consult. And the democratic elected organisations like Feds and Greens and Beef and Lamb have really been excluded in that process. So there has to be a better way, and this is not it. So I think we all like to see an RMA work better, and I'd rather probably bravely see that the RMA is not a bad document, because if you actually read the beginning, it's a bit like reading a discussion document. Let's read it, can't read it's okay. But somehow we should ban lawyers and consultants. so something.
That's good. All right, so we're going to open the floor up now to questions on the whole gamut of what we've been talking about tonight. Who wants to start off? Jason Graham, South Canterbury Provincial President, with us tonight.
Yeah, I've just got a bit of a statement to make, more around, around the submission process and people thinking about making submissions. That we talk about a rural economy, but I like to sort of think of it more as a regional economy, because we're all intertwined. So when you're talking about the effects, if we can portray the effects that it's going to have on the whole region, the towns, and a greater voting base, I think we can have a good impact. And that leads on to any opportunity you get to talk to people, suppliers or friends in town. And if it's going to be hard to get through a lot of them to actually get a submission in, but if you can convince 1 or 2 people to actually put a submission in from town, for supporting what they think, it's going to have an effect on them. So it all helps. So keep it in mind.
So some of the things we really appreciate from our farmers are Pioneer Ad, John Deere Ad, FMG. I hope you watch it. It's actually subliminally telling urban people that actually farmers are good people and care about the land. And so for those that are servicing issues here, please put in those as well. And it's not about us being farmers more important here, it's about a partnership. We depend on each other, and that's what's really important. Back what Terry said right at the beginning is there's those that multiply effect through the people that, as we said in the slide there, that feed into the farmers to allow them to do what they do. No, farmers don't build irrigators, so don't build fertiliser, which is wrong. So, but we do still own fertiliser. But you think about the innovation that's come out of this area. It's been a partnership between farmers and commons of farmers. So those that are serving, please tell government that it's important for your business to work out.
So, question up the back.
Your team has gone through the discussion document in the NES and talked specifically about some of the details, dinner one and phosphate standards and fencing and riparian zones. But when I read the discussion document, the thing that scared, there are a few things that are sort of overarching which scared the hell out of me. And one is, and the premise of the discussion document which talks about Te Mana o Te Wai, to me is a pretty scary concept. And for those of you who haven't read the discussion document, it's basically saying that this rather ethereal notion of the water in its natural state has a higher priority as being kept in that natural state than any other use, including human health or human requirements, as an overarching part of all the other stuff that comes underneath it. And I'd be interested in your comment on that, because to me, that was under the previous NPS, that was a guide to making decisions. Under this proposal, it's to become the priority rule that determines the use of water for any activity in New Zealand from here on out. And to me, if you literally translate the meaning of Te Mana o Te Wai, it means you couldn't have any urbanisation, you couldn't take any more water out of any stream, you couldn't put anything into a water body, you certainly couldn't build a city on top of it with a waterway. So I'd be interested in your comments on that. And the other concept which really scares me, and David Parker talked about it at a meeting that we had a couple of weeks ago, is that the first NPS set the national bottom lines at achievable levels, and you've talked about that, the 6.9 provided for nitrates, provides for ecosystem health, but it's a level at which when you do fancy maps like Porter, there's only a few areas in New Zealand that's going to really struggle to get to that level, and the Highlands Plains is one of them. But we think that with other mitigations like managed level for recharge, we will get there. The proposals they have now for water quality standards are unachievable, and so their intent is now to have an exceptions regime. And the previous NPS had a no exceptions regime, which meant that everybody had to comply with the rules eventually. If you have an exceptions regime, it has two effects. One is it'll let off the politically powerful, so that's the urban authorities. But when politically weak institutions, such as farmers, ask for an exemption because you can't achieve those targets in their drains, every man, every activist, hairy armpitted jammy wearing second plane, gun smoking fruit, will then say you can't possibly let farmers off their responsibilities for water quality. So it'll increase the rural-urban divide like we've seen earlier. And I'm disappointed I haven't heard you talk about the proposal for an exceptions regime where the current regime provides specifically for no exceptions. So could you talk about those two issues?
Before Paul's get up in the last bit, because there's a hell of a lot more we can cut down and it's got to go through exercise.
Yep. So absolutely, and you're absolutely right. We struggle to, because there's so much in these documents, what to actually talk through. We've got to 60 slides and far too long for just a few bits we wanted to. You're right on both of those. The exception regime is something that we fundamentally oppose. I think it's a good rule of thumb that if you have a rule, then you have to have, or propose you have to have lots of exceptions. It's probably a very poor rule and hasn't been well thought through. And I agree with your comments entirely on that. Particularly around the hydro, there's exceptions for hydro schemes, which was actually imposed by all those main working groups that gave input, actually opposing exceptions for hydro schemes. They're named hydro schemes, not every hydro scheme. They just happen to be some of the government-owned hydro schemes, but it's a coincidence, I'm sure. For Tomono HY, I agree with you as well. It's probably an animal sort of way of looking at the waterway. However, this MPS now puts a hierarchy in and basically says that when you look at the outcomes that you want and the way regional plans are going to be put together, that first of all you have to achieve ecosystem health, then you have to achieve human contact and kind other things. Then you work through human health needs, and last is for social, economic, community needs.
Like I said, I'm not anti-trout, but trout somehow managed to avoid that hierarchy.
Yeah, I'm anti-trout, but yes, it did. So we have a real worry around the MPS and the way how that will actually play out. I think it cuts across the sort of ethos of the RMA in Part 2 around sustainable development, and I agree with Gavin, mainly he's my boss, but also that the RMA is around sustainable development. Part 2 RMA is around balancing up economic, environmental, community and social aspirations, what the community wants, and those different levers that are trying to come out with the right answer. And that's the way it's been approached. It doesn't mean have bottom line, it just has that approach. That's quite a gnarly thing to work through, that's the way it's worked through. We've gone in different directions on that and what it means. But this MPS cuts across that. So on both the points, we did cover these in terms of backup slides, so we did. But I agree with you on both those points, we're going to go hard on those in our session.
So perhaps the regional councils would have a go at challenging whether it's ultra virus.
Right, next question. We've got a microphone for Michael. I'll move way out so I can't see you. Michael.
Yeah, given that I'm a bit of a cynic really, there is no right of reply to any submission process here. Do we even know that they're going to read the submissions? It's not even for Parliament.
So,
how seriously are they taking community concerns over what they're proposing?
I think it's important for the volume of submissions. It's very hard to tell from. It's not like an RMA process when you have to have a summary submissions and that goes with the hearing panel. And it's all very legalistic. You have scope issues, as Chris or Gavin Waddle said at the start. This hasn't got a hearing. The government has appointed a little panel to handpicked to give it recommendations. It's a mixed bag, I think, of people on that panel. They will read the major submissions. I don't know read every submission, they don't have much time, but I think MFE will have to give them a flavour or a summary of what the other submissions say. So I think personally from a standpoint and a volume point of view, it is important we get in submissions, but they're not necessarily going to take account of every single submission. If that was the question.
Well, that's undermining democracy.
It is. So
that's the key fundamental problem.
yep. And what we will be doing is working on getting much more transparency, but we can't guarantee that. We can't work on that basis.
So how do we operate to get democracy?
Well, we'll put huge amount of pressure on a further. We'll be asking officially. We've asked for we've asked to give me feedback for emails, but we are officially asking for. I think we're asking for the panel's recommendations to be made public and for a further round of input to be made prior to making decisions. And I think we can OIA official information act hell and we might even start with Christian Dunn and see if we want to say OIA. So I shouldn't catch on Christian Dunn because that's really bad one. Some of them might be some good ones because it's a good reason for Christian Dunn.
If we don't get much traction, there's always another question to raise.
We will continue to put pressure on transparency, but we're always saying is that we can't guarantee that the city is to our all. But I think it flies in the face of good process, certainly flies in the face of transparent government. So we've been told.
What is the legal position on that?
The legal position is that because it's a so acts are called primary legislation, they have to go through Parliament and all that. It's an experiment. Regulations are passed by Cabinet. So at the beginning that's Labour and New Zealand First. There are no minimum requirements in relation to regulations in the normal practice process. There is a regulations review committee we're looking at that, and laughingly, does that mean that it's a joke? But in theory, that's the parliamentary committee that could review a regulation. I suspect it had to be after the regulation was made. Yes, no. So, but pressure, political pressure, is what we'll continue to do, and everybody else needs to do. So what we're doing is, and Ian McKenzie, I'll challenge you a little bit. This is not urban versus rural, but they want to turn it into that if they can. They're going to stop doing that. I jokingly said, what happens if Auckland has demands that the water in Waikato is fit for drinking? When they pump it out, are they going to put pressure on Hamilton? But that's how some of the regulations currently look like. So it's continued pressure. Be assured that they know in Wellington the mood out in farming, so they know what farmers are thinking, and they are worried. And let's continue to be positive about changing things, but that don't get any pressure off them thinking they can get away with what they're proposing.
So there has been a wee change of tone from the ministers since the came out, and then there's some NFE workshops. What the ministers are saying is we want feedback, we are listening. Normally I don't think it would probably be quite that tone. So we can only take them at their word that they are listening and they will give us more feedback. The meeting down in Gore, the minister said that people in the areas and the feds will have more conversations with them. So that is the doors open a little bit more, so we'll be making sure we can go through that.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Chris. And that's where it's important to submit, but equally, that's where turnouts like 460 of you here tonight is equally as important as a show of political pressure and also unity and strength of farmers. So that's why events like this are going to be very important. Now, look, conscious that time's getting on, we've got a tea and coffee. Don't want to be standing between the crowd and the bar. So we've got one more question up there today, Neil Brown, Mayor-elect Neil Brown.
Neil Brown, Mayor-elect, as you see. This focus is on fresh water, and it affects everyone in the country as well as the urban, and Ian touched on that before. So are the cities, do you know, are the cities doing nothing about this, or are they just accepting it and going to charge their ratepayers, do it and charge their ratepayers, and then they'll find out about it in a few years' time because their rates will skyrocket? Or are they going to ask for an exemption, and can they ask for an exemption and get one in the plan as it is, document as it is?
I know about dealings with local government New Zealand, they're quite worried by some of these proposals. They pushed back. I showed some of the work before, particularly on some of the DIN limits. There are requirements in the proposals around urban and sewage plans and other things. I've gone into depth. I'm not sure. I'd have to check up about the exemption, actually, to be honest with you. Potentially, they can ask for an exemption. It's interesting. It's like the moratorium to me is like Auckland has a problem with its sewage at the moment. A lot of beaches are getting closed quite routinely for failing swimming standards. They're admitting that, they're quite open about it. They're putting a huge amount of money, dollars, I think, over 7 billion over 10 years. It's going to take a long time. What they're not doing in the meantime, what the government isn't doing in the meantime for the problem from urban authorities and the pressure on housing is just stopping all housing development in the whole country. That's what the moratorium is doing. So it's not apples and pears from that. There is going to be pressure on city and district councils, particularly on sewage, I think, on this, and the costs, I think, are going to go up. Whether they get an exemption or not, I don't know. Let's have a look at that. So it's not just rural.
Yeah, some of the three waters that they call it coming down the track, so some of the details are not there yet. But we have to think about some of our small rural towns that are struggling, and who's going to pay for that as well.
That's good. Thanks, Kevin. Now, look, Jo Burke has the microphone. I'm going to let her briefly,
Can you
one
hear me,
question,
Dave?
and then we're going to go to the back.
Is this turned off? Turned on? Can you hear me? Yeah, I'm Joanne Burke. My opinions are my own, not Federated Farmers, and whilst I really agree a lot with what Federated Farmers are doing, I'm slightly cynical as well. I'm just wondering the haste at which the Labour Party wanted to get this through. But I do have very, very strong cynicism that we will be listened to. And I'm looking at the urban sector as to whether or not they're really interested. And we're going to an awful lot of trouble here, voluntarily, with our time, to have to feed back to some proposals that just clearly don't work. But look, I was heartened to see on the 1st of October that 14,000 Dutch tractors drove to The Hague because they were challenged with the exact same thing from their government, asking them to, it was an environmental issue. So they jumped in their tractors, they had a really good day. They caused over 1,000 kilometres of traffic jams on a Monday morning, and they were cheered on by the Dutch people. And the overwhelming message by the Dutch public were, thank God someone's sticking up and saying enough is enough. Stop being politically correct, and we're farming. We're good, clean farmers in New Zealand. We're proud farmers in New Zealand. They're painting us to be dirty farmers still, and while I do agree with having to go back in minute detail to the ministers on this and to the group that proposed it, how can 20 odd people end up dictating the paperwork that we'll have to deal with for the next 30 years instead of actually farming our properties? I'm one that would love to actually have the tractor on the main highway in New Zealand. I think every tractor should be in their local town, and I'll be the first one in the queue. If there's no farms, there's no food, and there's no future. Thank you.
I'll keep this brief. I certainly don't want to keep you in front of your cup of tea. Just want to put 3 quick things. Before I say those 3 quick things, you can see how complex this topic is. That it's going to be extraordinarily difficult to understand the subject in just one quick evening like this, and I really appreciate your tenacity of sticking through this for the last few hours. One suggestion that's just come to me is that if you are going to make a submission and you're worried about whether it's going to be read or not, copy in your local MP. So I just spoke to Andrew about this. If you copy in your local MP, they're obliged to read it, and that will help making sure that it is pushed forward. Whether it's a local national MP that reads it might be more significant than somebody else. Just saying. So, Central Fresh Water, it has an NPS, it has an NES. There's a lot of complexity that you as farmers are going to get around. If only that was the only thing being thrown at you. There is a Zero Carbon Act, there is a Biodiversity NPS coming down in November, there's changes to the RMA. What this government is doing is throwing a whole lot of separate, quite significant policies your way. And the way that they're doing this is making you think, well, okay, now you as a farmer, today is Monday, so this is your water day, clearly tonight. Tomorrow's Tuesday, you'll be thinking about carbon and the Zero Carbon Act. Wednesday, you'll be thinking about biodiversity because that's your biodiversity day. And then Thursday and Friday, when you've got a little bit of free time, you'll consider the ramifications of the changes to the RMA. That's how you farm, right?
Friday's Fridays.
There is going to be, oh yes, a whole lot of things. And you do these quite secretly in your farming business, right? Wrong. So you've got to think about all these things in their entirety. What the government has not done is thought on your behalf of what happens when you accumulate these policies together. They don't realise, perhaps, and I'm being generous, they don't realise what the accumulated effects of all of these policies, not just the ones that we've been talking tonight, are going to have on farmers. They either don't realise or they don't care. I'll leave you to decide in your own mind what that is. So lastly, Federated farmers cannot fight this fight without the support of all farmers. So I want to invite you all, members, non-members, farmers in general, to join with us, to stand with us.
With tractors?
If necessary. To ensure there is a secure future for farmers with us. Thank you for your attendance tonight, and I hope you've gained a whole lot of information from this. We thank the team that done an amazing job trying to bring this to life. Enjoy your company.
I'd like to thank you all for coming along. We really appreciate your time this evening. There's a cup of tea and a bite to eat being put on, and a cash bar is available. This evening has been sponsored by 5 institutions in this town who we all deal with. They wish to remain nameless, but I really appreciate their contribution to making this possible. And I want you to go out of here with your head held high. When I started my farming career, David Longing said that farming was a sunset industry. He was wrong. We saw him off, and we'll get through this. Go out of here with your head held high. You are amongst the most resource-efficient farmers in the world. Right, thanks very much, everybody. Good evening. At the door as you go out.
G'day fellas, I thought I'd better come along and support you. Yeah, it's good to have you. How was the holiday? A trip, a quick trip. To the rugby or
Yeah.